Hello everyone, I'm so glad to have you. Today we'll be cooking in the pantry chicken croquettes. Now, what does in the pantry mean? That means that all the ingredients we'll be using today should be either in your pantry, in your fridge, or cheap and easy to get outside. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so first let's get into the ingredients. So for the chicken croquettes themselves, we're first going to need some canned chicken. And this is a 12.5 ounce can, but you can really use any. This one comes from Sam's Club, and it's pretty cheap at about $1.50 a can. Next, you'll need some breadcrumbs. Here, I've got plain Italian style, but again, if you have panko or plain breadcrumbs, any of them will work. Next, you'll need 1 egg. And then, optionally, you can have a little bit of pickle juice. I like to do this for both the salt and the flavor, but it's really up to you, and if you have it, great. If you don't, that's all right. Then you'll need about a tablespoon of mayonnaise. And then for the seasonings, once again, it's really up to you, but I like to do garlic powder, minced onion, and paprika. Now, if you'd like to join with the sauce that I recommend, you'll also need some barbecue sauce, which I'm using Blues Hog Original, some yellow mustard, and some honey. Alternatively, you can just use barbecue sauce and honey mustard, but I like to keep them separate to be able to manage the ratios between them. If you would not like to make the sauce, you can skip to the timestamp below, and that'll take you right to the chicken croquettes. So, let's start cooking. So first, we're gonna get started with the sauce. And now, usually I would do the sauce last, but in this case, the croquettes come off the stove very hot and very fresh, and they really don't take too long to cool off, and they don't take very long to cook either. And so, once we start making them, there's really not a good time in between to start the sauce. So, we're gonna get it done right now. First, we're gonna do about a tablespoon of mayonnaise. And now, all of this sauce is going to be measured out pretty roughly, and it really depends on your taste for the ratios. Next, we'll do about 3/4 parts of barbecue sauce. We'll do about 1/2 part of yellow mustard. Now, anywhere between 1/4 and 1/2 part of honey if you're using them separately. I like to go a little bit more on the 1/2 part, but it's better to add a little bit first and then add more later. And then finally, I like to do just a splash of pickle juice. This is entirely optional, but it adds a nice little flavor to the end. Then, once those are all in there, you're going to give it a nice little mix, and the color should start to become a little bit of a cream or light brown. So we're looking pretty good there, and we're going to give it a taste. And that's pretty solid. So now we can set this off to the fridge and get started on the croquettes. All right, welcome back if you skipped the sauce part, and welcome to the croquette part if you didn't. Now we're going to make the actual heart of the dish, the chicken croquettes. So first, we're going to take our canned chicken, and we're going to drain this. And now, it's not critical for all of the juice to get out, but we want to get as much out as we can, so that way it doesn't add additional moisture to our croquettes, because we will be frying these later, and that additional moisture can cause problems. Next, we'll take the lid off and dump that right into the mixing bowl. Now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and add our breadcrumbs, and we're going to add about 1/2 cup of these. And the reason that it's not imperative to get all of the juice out of the chicken is because once we add these breadcrumbs, they're going to soak up a lot of that moisture. These are also going to act as a binder, which is going to help once we add a lot of the other liquids in. Next, we're going to add another roughly tablespoon. You can use an actual tablespoon to help measure out if you'd like, but it doesn't need to be precise. We're going to go ahead and add our egg. Oops, well, then we're going to add any seasoning that you'd like. So first, we're going to start with our garlic powder. And with this, we don't want a whole lot because the Italian breadcrumbs already have quite a bit. We'll do the minced onion next. And again, same thing, just a light dash of that. And then finally, the paprika. That should be plenty. Then lastly, once again, if you'd like, you're welcome to add a bit of pickle juice. I always think that helps balance out some of those flavors and adds a little bit of extra salt without needing to directly add some salt. And before we get this all mixed up, I'm going to want to put on some gloves, so there we are. And then we're going to go ahead and give this a good mix. And now there's not really an over mixing for this, because as long as all the parts are incorporated and the chicken is well diced up, it's going to do just fine. And a good test of whenever that's ready is when you take a chunk of it and wipe it on the sides, and more came off the bowl than came off of your chunk. And so what that means is that it's acting as a good binder, and those breadcrumbs are doing a good job. And now you can take a look at it and grab a little piece of it and form it into your hand just like this. If it stays together, which this is, then you're pretty solid. If it's still a little liquidy or falling apart or maybe has a little bit too much moisture, you can always add more breadcrumbs and those will help you out. So now we're gonna move on to the next step. Now once your mixture is ready, we're gonna move on to forming the actual croquettes. So I like to put a piece of parchment paper down, but if you don't have parchment paper, you can use a plate, aluminum foil, or just whatever cooking surface you're using. So you're going to take a piece of your mixture and you wanna fold it into roughly golf ball size, and then flatten it out into a puck like this. So it's about ½ inch thick and maybe 1 or 2 inches around. And it can really be whatever size you'd like, but I like to cook them a little bit thinner, and that way they get done quicker. Now, if you're wondering why I don't have gloves on, when I went to go grab more parchment paper, I took my gloves off and realized that the last pair of gloves I had on was the last pair of gloves I had. And so in the spirit of in your cabinet cooking, I will continue without gloves for the rest of this, which is totally fine. As long as you're washing your hands, that egg isn't gonna do a whole lot, and there's not a whole lot of other things that we need to grab other than our pan. So I'm gonna speed up the process and get the rest of these done. So now that all our croquettes are formed, we're gonna start cooking them. So I'm using a nonstick pan, and it's important to note that if you are using a nonstick pan, you wanna heat your oil up with the pan. Now if you're using a non-nonstick pan, or I suppose a stick pan, then you'll want to heat up your pan before putting in your fat. Now when you put in your oil, for these you're gonna want a good layer of oil, just enough to cover the bottom, sides, and have a little bit of leftovers on the bottom. Now this is considered pan frying, and if you're uncomfortable with oil in a pan, you're more than welcome to air fry these, bake them, or cook them in whatever other method you want. The important thing is just to make sure that they get up to 165 so that egg in the middle thoroughly cooks through. Now if you're pan frying them like I am, that temperature is not going to be a problem because the outside is going to be a nice crispy golden brown. So I'm going to wait for this to heat up and I'll be right back with you. So I've got my oil up to about 325 degrees. As you can see, it's starting to get pretty warm. And one thing to note before you put your croquettes in is you're going to want a place to put them once they're out of the oil. So for me, I've got a plate with a paper towel, but you could use any sort of drying rack or other place where you can store them. So now we're going to take our tongs and we're going to start putting them in. And you're going to want to put the biggest ones in first because they're going to take the longest to cook. And as long as you make sure to get the moisture out of your canned chicken and mix your ingredients to a reasonable amount, then you shouldn't really have any splatter going on. We're also not using a whole lot of oil because you don't need to fry these. They'll cook just fine and just quick enough in a pan fry. So I'm not sure if we'll have enough space in this pan to get all of them in. That's all right, we can cook them in 2 batches. And so you should see a nice even simmer on the oil. And it'll come up just a little bit on the sides, which allows those croquettes to cook all the way around instead of having one side be either burnt or, not thoroughly cooked. So So we're gonna let these cook for just a little bit, and I'll be back when they're ready to flip. So it's been about 3 minutes, and these are starting to get a really nice golden brown on the bottom. And so we're gonna get ready to flip them. Now, because of those breadcrumbs and that egg, these should be pretty solid, and you shouldn't have any worry about them falling apart. If they do end up falling apart, that's totally okay. So those are what mine look like right now, and those look really, really solid. Now, if you'd like, you're welcome to use an internal thermometer and check the insides. And again, most of this is pre-cooked, especially if you didn't use an egg, but it's always good to check. Ours are about 130 right now, so they still need just a few more minutes. So, I went ahead and cooked these up to temp. As you can see, they're a really nice brown on both sides, and they temped up to 160. So, we're gonna go ahead and take these off and put them right onto our pan with that paper towel. And this just makes sure that when they dry, they don't get soggy or cold as we wait. Now I'm gonna go ahead and cook the last of our croquettes, and I'll see you at the table. And there you guys have it, our in the pantry chicken croquettes. And if you followed along with me, cheers. This is a great recipe if you're meal prepping or lazy. I mean, we use one pan and one bowl. And so a lot of the times when I get home from work and really just don't feel like cooking, this is a great way to get a lot of protein with very simple ingredients, and it tastes great. So I really appreciate you guys joining. If there's any recipes that you'd like to see or any comments you'd like to give, I'd love to hear them, and I can't wait to see you until next time.